Hello, and welcome to our educational segment on ChatGPT and privacy law. Wait a minute. Write me a script for an educational segment on ChatGPT and privacy law. I started the segment in this way today to show everyone that we could all be duped by ChatGPT's conversational style. The bot has the ability to write songs, poems, write code, it can write contracts. But how does it actually work? Using AI and machine learning, the bot uses information it's read on the internet to respond to the user's question. These large language models are trained to predict the next word for a given input. And they don't have a choice about this. They must predict the next word, even if it means that they have to make something up. This has been called hallucinating. The question today is whether ChatGPT is going to be a barrier or a help to privacy lawyers. The company's own CEO remarked that ChatGPT is incredibly limited, but good enough at some things to create a misleading impression of greatness. It's a mistake to be relying on it for anything important right now. It's a preview of progress. We have lots of work to do on robustness and truthfulness. He even goes on in an interview to talk about how it's not sufficient for the legal industry quite yet.
You really want is a legal model, like AI lawyer base.
Right.
But that'd be hard for a bunch of reasons. One of which is the model wouldn't have learned basic reasoning, and others, it wouldn't have all the world knowledge of everything else. But if you start with this model that knows everything a little bit, and then give it just a little bit of data to push it in the direction of being a really good lawyer, I think that's a much easier path. I mean, it needs to be, familiar with like all, case law ever,
Right.
for example, and it needs to be able to like know the standard kinds of things that first-year associates are expected to do, and it needs to have like practice drafting documents and getting comments back from a partner and incorporating those and everything like that.
Well, this is very telling, but nonetheless, we owe it to ourselves to test it out. Before we dive into the substantive questions, since this is a segment on privacy law, I will leave you with a little thought piece on whether ChatGPT is even privacy compliant for users. Upon checking its privacy policy, a few things stood out. For example, this and this. And in my opinion, the fact that it needs to collect your phone number and your email address in order to sign you up is a red flag. Not only that, but it's pretty obvious upon signing up that they ask you not to share any sensitive information. Nonetheless, I wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt and ask it personally whether it was compliant. Its answer appears to be very avoidant, saying that regulations do not apply to itself as an entity, but it skates around the answer as to what the company OpenAI may be collecting on its behalf. Privacy law is a very unique area of law where we intersect with technology very heavily. For example, I was able to ask the chatbot to write me code for a privacy portal. This is really awesome for small startups who can't afford privacy professionals or privacy engineers. Something that concerns me is that there's a massive amount of complexity back-end with the data lakes when it comes to erasure and access rights. ChatGPT just doesn't have the complexity and bandwidth in order to deal with something like this. So don't worry, privacy engineers, your jobs are safe. And the question we're all thinking, how will ChatGPT perform when it's asked privacy law questions? I decided to ask it a very simple question to start off with: how to set up a data privacy office. I find the answer to be a good starting place for the wider business folks. However, I think this is just one of those things where it's okay to use for guidance, but should not be fully executed this way. It's important that a privacy lawyer looks at the specific details of the company, because the law is actually drafted so broadly that individual assessments are really necessary. And furthermore, I think that a lot of lawyers gatekeep how they actually make legal assessments and how they run things in the privacy office. And this is the result. Not much information can be found online, and so the way the AI works, it has little to learn from. Let's try ramp it up in this question. If a user requests unsubscription from email marketing, is it contrary to the GDPR to require them to sign into a portal with their login credentials? I think this is a pretty good basic answer, and it gives correct information generally. Let's challenge it a bit more here. So we tried to challenge it a little bit here, but I don't find the chatbot to be successful in this case. One of my suspicions here is that the chatbot couldn't keep up with the follow-up question because it only has knowledge up until 2020. So it can't really pinpoint any specific websites with guidance that are up to date. So it just gives this kind of like general link to the ICO, for example. Let's ask it a follow-up question. So I think this is a pretty good answer in general, but disclaimer, as most lawyers say, it depends. It's kind of missing that human element to make sure that it is indeed classified as marketing content. I feel like it also lacks a bit of information about antitrust law, which also reigns this topic in Germany. Now for a bit of a controversial one, let's ask the chat to make us a transfer impact assessment. Single-handed most useful information that it provides is by saying choose an EU provider. But other than that, I find it to be very general. It doesn't even mention special categories of data. It doesn't mention sub-processors. I'm pretty disappointed by its answer, to be honest. But it just goes to show that ChatGPT is not ready for these kind of complex questions. For our final question, let's challenge it with something topical. As we can see here, guys, this is a huge blocker in using ChatGPT as a lawyer. It is not up to date with any cases or judgments. So, what's my conclusion? I think that it's a great tool for writing. A lot of lawyers struggle about what to search, and the conversational nature of ChatGPT really helps with that. When it comes to the subject matter, for law, it's simply not up to date and it's not accurate. In a few years, when it's connected with technology such as LexisNexis or Thomson Reuters, I think we will have made a lot of progress. But what does ChatGPT mean for the legal industry in the long term? The chat is just a statistical model based on probabilities. It will make mistakes. It's trained off of information on the internet, which can easily be wrong. Nonetheless, I do believe AI has had exponential growth in recent years, so I would say what seems like trash today could be near perfect 3 years from now. So it's worth keeping a close eye on the progress.